Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. Hi, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
We are going to continue what has become a tradition and shout out some areas really quick before we start today's topic that have entered our top ratings. Around the world, for the first time in our top 5 of the ratings is Guatemala. So we want to welcome the people of Guatemala and ask you to please keep listening and spread the word. In the United States, we also have a place that I think we have not shouted out before that is now in our top ratings, and that's Hawaii.
Oh.
I don't remember saying Hawaii in the past, but I could be wrong.
No, but it's so beautiful. I imagine. I've never been there, but
I have not been there either. Allison, we
really
should
want to.
take a podcast trip to Hawaii. I really want to go too.
Oh
I have cousins who live. I have cousins who live on the West Coast who go there all the time because it's so easy for them to get to. Yeah,
maybe like Cindy and Alison on location.
That would just, awesome. We now have preschool peeps going, yes, that would rock. That would be like, we go on tour or something.
Travel around and meet all of our peeps somehow. That would be fun.
Yes. And talk to them about things like today's topic.
Yes.
Which includes talking about the other areas of learning. And you may be thinking, oh my goodness, what other areas are they coming up with? We're talking about areas of learning. Subjects for learning that aren't paid as much attention to as, let's say, literacy and math. Mm-hmm. There's so much attention paid to literacy and math that there's actually more research about them than the other topics. The other topics include, Allison, remind me if I leave any out. The other topics include topics like social studies, mm-hmm. science, the different technology, the different forms of the arts, things like visual art. There are many different types of arts, music and movement, visual arts, music, the dramatic arts,
dramatic play, like the dramatic arts, like acting.
But it's the same. But it starts with dramatic play.
It starts with
what are the dramatic arts really? It's people imitating and pretending. That's what actors basically do. When I think about, having seen, for example, Helen Mirren play Queen Elizabeth, that's a bunch of imitating and pretending, which starts in our dramatic play areas.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. But it is a separate,
and I'm sure there's more to it.
Because there is a separate category.
There's more to it, I know, but
so like but it's hard. It's hard to get an assessment on dramatic arts when, to me, they're doing it in dramatic play. So it's like, but that's not what they mean. I don't think that's what they mean in the assessment.
But it could be, imitation and pretend. Those are both very important things for children to do when they're young. It's how they practice the skills they're learning, and it's how they develop an understanding of the things and people in their world. So, there can be information reported about to families, for example, not just is your child recognizing their name and is your child counting to 10. It should be, include things like, is your child imitating and pretending as we expect to see a child do in these ages? One of the issues is that people don't always understand what's included in these other areas of learning, I think. And that's because there isn't as much research. So much research concentrates on literacy and math and building the literacy and math skills that there's less research about how does a child learn social studies, which is learning about your community and society. That's what social studies is. I've spoken with people, both families and professionals, who think social studies is basically the same as socialization. When they talk about social studies, they will start talking to me about socialization, but those are different things. Socialization includes how children interact with adults and with their classmates. Social studies is let's learn about the people and things in our community and beyond in our society. A really great field trip for social studies, if let's say you're in a walking town, is to go into your walking town and maybe go into the dry cleaner and talk to the people who work there, and then, if that's safe, and then go into the library and talk to the librarians about what they do. And then maybe you see the mail person heading your way,
Go to the
and you
post
talk to
office.
that person about what it is to deliver mail. That's learning about the community. That's social studies. Even, when holidays come up, like federal holidays, and you have children learning things that maybe Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, that's social studies.
Yeah. I think learning about your family and your role in your family and what your family's role in the community is also part of social studies. So when you're teaching them about, like, what does your family do for work, kind of like, what do you do in your family to help your family in its own little society. I think that's like the small part. It's like learning about yourself within that little society, and then what your family role is within the bigger community society, I think, is social studies too.
Yeah, I think it includes,
but yeah.
Yeah, you did. But
Yeah.
I think it includes things like finding out what is their job? What do they
What does
do?
your
And how does
mom and
that
dad
job
do?
help people?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
does that help society?
Right.
That's part of it. Also, understanding the laws of society, like we get in the car and you have to sit in your car seat and you have to belt in and you
Yes.
have to stay that way. That's
Yeah.
part of social studies. It's health and safety, but it's
Yeah.
also social
It's
studies, because
social
you're learning about the
studies. Yeah.
rules of your society.
Yes.
Children, I remember when my children were really young, I was someone who was interested in things like political elections. Gives me a little heartburn now, but when when my children were young, this was something that we would talk about all the time with my children from very young ages, because I thought it was important that they understood the importance and the value of voting. When we talk in the United
Yes.
States about voting, that's social studies.
When I taught kindergarten every day, I would put 2 books up for election, and whatever book won, I would read at the end of the day. And I made little ballot boxes, and every day I would put little, like, trinkets on the children's desks, because it was during COVID, so they all had desks then. Okay. And they would take that trinket and they would put it in the ballot box. And it was like an anonymous vote. And at the end of the day, we would count the votes, and whichever one won, that's the book that we would read. And that was my way of teaching them, like, your vote counts, and whichever one has the most votes, that's the one that wins. But just because your vote, say you voted for the book that didn't win, that doesn't mean your vote didn't count. Like, it's still important to vote, even if your candidate loses. And it taught them, like, almost like the process of the voting, but also, like, what to do when you do win. How do you win graciously? How do you lose graciously? And then whichever book lost, I would put it up again the next day. And, usually it would win, because I wanted the kids to be able to read the books they wanted. But, like, that was my easy, simple way of teaching the kids, this is how the voting process works, and your vote matters. And it was just an easy way to do it. There was no politics involved.
Easy, simple, but I love it.
Yeah.
I love that you give them trinkets so that it's totally anonymous. That's totally a great idea.
It was during an election year, I think, too. But, like, I was like, when I go to vote, my vote, nobody knows who I voted for. Nobody knows what I voted for. Like, I go into the box, nobody knows. And that's the way it should be. So that was the same thing. Like, they would get little trinkets, different trinkets every single day. So it wasn't like, oh, Allison's got the purple one. Like, it was just, we would just throw them on the desks, and that was it. Yeah. But, and you
That's
didn't
a
have to
great
tell
idea.
people what your vote was. Yeah.
And you can do that with younger children. I remember voting on things when I taught younger children than kindergarten, but it was often one of those, raise your hand if you want this, or raise your hand if you want that. I love that you use trinkets.
We have voted, in my class currently, my 3 to 5-year-olds voted on the names of we have a fish, and we have a snail in our class, and we voted through question of the day. Wasn't as
Nice.
anonymous because they put their names up on the list, but it was a way of like, here's the 3 names, and it was the teachers that chose a name. Choose which one you want to go with, and whichever one has the most votes, that's what the fish's name is. That's what the snail's name will be.
Nice.
Not as anonymous, but still, a way to say like, your voice counts.
And you're teaching social studies. It's social studies, the arts. We don't have a lot of research about what are the steps children should take to understand these things. Maybe it's because we don't have as much guidance for teaching them in the early childhood world that people tend to shy away. But I think it's also because there's been so much emphasis put on the development of literacy and math skills that we forget that we're supposed to be supporting the foundation for young children to learn all different areas of learning, all different subjects. They're going to encounter them all as they get older. And if we don't provide them with some sort of foundation in them, then we're not doing them any favors. The brain develops most rapidly between birth and 5 years old. Windows of learning are wide open, says Dr. Pam Schiller, who taught us about the windows of opportunity. So why are we not taking advantage of these windows of opportunity when they're young? Is it because it's not emphasized by society, but it should be? And maybe as early educators, we need to go to families and boards of education and all these places and say, please, we need time to support these other areas. Something like science, it boggles the mind. It boggles my mind anyway, that the science area in most early childhood classrooms is the most neglected. It's put there, maybe, but it's neglected.
So
we're so
sad.
Busy concentrating on other things.
Yes. It makes me so sad. It's not because I have a very big, not big, but like science section in my classroom, but I love science. Okay. But I also feel like I can use all this stuff to get them to write, to get them to draw, to get them to talk, to get them to open up. And so like I have a fish, I have a snail. I am currently in the process of buying frogs for them, the tadpoles that grow up.
Brave woman.
And I'm probably going to get them a hermit crab just because somebody's going to give me a hermit crab. But those things in my classroom make these children like talk to each other more. They have the job of feeding the fish. They watch me clean the tank. It teaches them so much just having that little fish in there, like it's a part of our classroom.
On my end anyway, Allison froze. So I'm going to take it until she comes back and just tell you that these areas of learning, science, technology is so very important. Technology really matters in the year 2023. We need to make sure that children are exposed to technology, understand some of the workings of it, understand to use it for things like research and creation, because they're going to be having to use technology for many years to come. But again, we don't have a lot of data about how do children learn this? What are the exact steps that we should take them through? And I think that we do need to campaign for making sure that there's some equality in the amount of time that we spend on different topics, and making sure that there's some research done. We really need to look into that and say to the people who study early childhood education or who study these topics, like, hey, we need to know how to support this in the young children that we work with. So that's the other areas of learning that we really have not touched enough upon, but I hope you will. I am going to let Allison back in. If you're watching us on YouTube, you may have seen her go away. It must be the internet. The internet went out. I kept talking, Allison. It's all right. I can talk and talk and talk.
Okay.
I kept talking.
I
it's
know,
all right.
but that totally, all of a sudden the screen went black and it said something weird. And I was like, I don't know but my internet was still okay.
I don't know.
It said it was still
but
there.
She's
and all
back.
of a sudden it went out. And I was like, okay, I'm
So
back. Sorry.
the people watching YouTube saw you disappear. The people who are not watching YouTube heard you disappear. But the show must go on. So I was saying, I was saying that we need to appeal to people to get us this research. People who research young children, people who are experts in these topics. Maybe we need to start to appeal to people and say, hey, we need to know what to do with children in early education. Even more than that, I think that we need to go to the people who we serve, which includes the families, and say to the people who we serve, we need you to rally around the fact that your children need to learn across many different areas of learning and topics. Because if we leave these out, they're not provided with a great foundation. The foundation will only be concentrated in literacy and math, but your children are going to spend years learning science, social studies. Hopefully your school system still has the arts and they'll be able to participate in that. Right? So, and what was the other technology? I was just saying they have to know technology. They have to know technology these days. So I'm sure maybe, people who are listening could come up with other areas of learning that I'm leaving out that are not paid as much attention to. I think physical development is paid attention to, sort of. Like, we're really worried about their fine motor skills because that helps children with literacy. So we spend a lot of time building fine motor so that they'll be able to write. We take them for gross motor play every day, or we should. I'm not so sure that that's done in a way that supports all of the physical development that should be worked on in the early childhood years. Again, how much research do we have about what are the different sorts of movements? And if that research exists, how much of it is being brought to either the early childhood level or early childhood staff members? Woefully little, I think. Right?
Yes.
Woefully little.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, so think about all that and think about how you're allotting your time. Think about how much time are you spending teaching children about the arts and how letting them get a chance to be creative in it. How much time are you spending teaching children intentionally about the community? It should be all the time. It should be every day. About society, about technology and the other things that we've talked about. And maybe you can start to find more of a balance when you really think about that. Yeah. And if you're a family member, you're not a professional, you're someone who's raising young children, interested in their education, please go to the program where the children go and say, how much time do you spend on these other things? Because it matters. Yeah. Okay, now that I had my taste of what it would be like to host alone, I'm really glad you're back, Alison.
I'm so sorry.
It happens. It happens.
Oh, she's
technology is only good when it works. Let's all face it.
Yes.
And thank you to everyone who's listening for knowing I'm filling in while Alison comes back. We will attempt to both be here the whole time for the next episode.
Sorry.
Bye, preschool peeps.